Oh, at Newport Folk Festival. Summer of 65, Ralph Rensler, I'd taken over the management of the Club 47, the coffee house in Cambridge, from the guy who had been running it. And Ralph and I were friends. We were very close friends, Bill Keith and me and Ralph. And Ralph, of course, Ralph at one point managed Bill Monroe. And Bill Keith, when Bill Keith was with Monroe, Bill Keith and Del McCurry and Ralph shared an apartment in Nashville. We called it the Bluegrass Rest Home. And Ralph had an apartment in New York City that we often stayed at down in the Village. And so we were very good friends. And Ralph said, would you like to be on the board of the Newport Folk Festival? And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in that. And he said he felt that I was in touch with younger artists, and which I was. And they needed that, because it was a pretty old guard, Theo Bickel, Pete Seeger, Judy Collins was on the board, Peter Yarrow, people like that. So I said I would be interested, and so I came on the board there at the end of 65, and so I was on the board, and eventually, people would submit tapes and records and things and want to get on the festival. So I'm listening, and of course, Mr. Bojangles, it didn't have to be submitted. It just became a huge hit, and so we invited Jerry Jeff, and Dave Bromberg came with him, and they were on the festival. I'm pretty sure it was 69. And we had a show on Sunday afternoon called New Folks. And that year, we had him, Van Morrison, James Taylor, Steve Young, pretty good lineup of New Folks. The year before it, Joni Mitchell, we were pretty close to what was going on. Well, he was still in New York, and then subsequently I did, go down to the Village every so often, and I met McGuire by this point. McGuire was there, and, you just hang out, and it wasn't any earth-shaking moments. We just got along right away, just right away, and I liked Jerry Jeff, and of course, the more I found out about him as a songwriter, and as singer, I just loved his voice. I just loved his voice.
I love that lazy drawl.
Yeah. And then later, he moved to Austin, and he got the Gonzo band going, and then they would come up when I was up in Massachusetts after leaving Woodstock. This couple there was a booking agency called Athena, and they booked a lot of these folk rock acts, the New Riders, the Purple Sage, and a bunch of different acts, and they were booking Jerry Jeff. And they were out of, I believe that agency originally was in Colorado, but this couple, and I knew one of them, Liz and Dave Marsden, they opened a branch of it in Massachusetts, in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which was right down the road from where I was living in this cottage my folks had built near the seashore. And since I knew her, she had gone out with Bill Keith once or twice. And I said, well, I'm here, and if you need an opening act, I got a little trio. And Amos Garrett had moved. The Ian and Sylvia band was living in Woodstock when I was there, which was Amos Garrett, N.D. Smart, Jim Colgrove, and Ben Keith, the steel player. And so I got to know all of them, and they played on records, and I had a band in Woodstock that we actually made a couple of records at Bearsville. We made a record at Bearsville. They played on it, and then Amos moved over to Massachusetts. He was an avid fisherman, and He was the only local call I could make from that house I was living in. and we'd get together and have a few drinks and go fishing and play the guitars. And if I got enough money from the Marstons, I'd put Amos on with us, with Everett Dennis and me. So we had a nice deal there. And we'd go to do mostly college gigs. So Jerry Jeff, we opened several concerts for him. And that was in the full swing of the Gonzo period. And I never did cocaine. I never was into that. And there was quite a bit of that going on, and it was fairly wild and woolly. But I underneath it all, it was Jerry Jeff. He never changed. And his songs, he was writing great songs at the time, and the band was fun, and the gigs were fun, and I was opening up for him, and we always had a big time afterwards, and, it was good. Then later, when I got to Cowboys, Jerry found out that and he knew Cowboy. They'd never worked together as far as I know, but he knew him. And so he was working on a record, and I said, well, you can come up here and do stuff. So we did. That's a Gypsy Songman album. I did about 10 tracks on that record. Some of it he recorded with the Gonzo Band in Texas, and I recorded the rest up at Cowboys. And I like that album. It's got some really nice stuff on it. You hear the children, what's that song? Paul Siebel's song? Some very good songs. And that was another thing about Jerry Jeff. It wasn't all about him. He sang other people's songs, and he sang them really well.
And chose well, too.
Yes, he did. And so I like that. I like that album.
How was he in the studio?
He was great.
All of that stuff live on the floor?
Oh, yeah. He could deliver the goods. I mean, there was no problem with him singing. And those musicians, you don't have to talk to them. It is nothing to say. You just play.
His energy just jumps right off the record.
Yeah.
On whatever he's doing.
Oh, he is just a great performance every time. And those are the artists that I've always gravitate towards. I'm not a guy that's going to be able to fix if you can't sing, or if you can't, it isn't necessarily a perfect, thing. It's a performance, and it's a legitimate performance, and that's what people buy as far as I'm concerned. Perfection is not that interesting. And in country music and folk music, it's all about personality, really, and heart, and that's what you want. But these people actually can do it. They can sing, and even Prine, with his gravelly voice, you listen to those vocals. Now, the very end, it was getting a little harder with him because he did lots of health issues. But even with that, the heart is there, and that's what you want. Pete Seeger used to say, I can't sing anymore. Nobody. I said, Pete, they just want you to show up. They want you to be there. One of the most moving performances I ever witnessed was we were at a big folk festival in Denmark. And I was there with Bill Keith and Eric Weisberg and Kenny Kosek. And Pete was the headliner, of course, and Arlo Guthrie was on the show, and Tom Paxton was on the show. And they had a big finale with everybody on the stage. And I forget, who knows what we sang. We sang some big, nice chestnut that everybody could sing. And then we were all going off the stage, and I heard some singing, and I thought maybe there was an artist tent in back somewhere. And it happened just the way it happened. I was kind of bringing up the rear of all these performers walking off the stage with Pete. And I looked around, it was the audience. They were singing to him. I said, Pete, go back there. They're singing to you. It was just unbelievable. I get all choked up even thinking about it. It just was so beautiful, you know. They wanted to thank him. I forget what the song was. Maybe it was "We Shall Overcome" or something like that. But they were singing it to him. It's just so that's, and you know, I've worked with Nancy Griffith or Iris DeMent or John Prine or any of those artists. They just get there and sing, and they put their heart into it, and they do not pick it apart and want to make it perfect. They just don't want to do that. They can try it 2 or 3 times. That's fine, but let's not beat a dead horse. And if it isn't happening, let's move on to something else. And you can do that too. And that's part, as a producer, that to me, that's a very important function, is knowing when the wind is going out of the sails and you're reaching a point of diminishing returns by going over something again and again and again. Now, Cowboy could do this when he did smoke a lot of dope at one point, and he would make people do things over and over and over and over. And he got to a place where he couldn't finish things. That's not a good place. But I'm fortunate that I had an uncle who was a watercolorist, and I think if I was a painter, that's what I'd be. I'm not an oil painter. I'm a watercolorist. You got to move fast with a watercolor, and it's over.